Version 2.12 is in testing, and there's quite a few awesome things to have a look at. But before we get into this video, I want to quickly shout out Southnode. They offer top of the line servers at extremely reasonable prices, as well as web hosting and Discord bots. This isn't a paid promotion, but Southnode has helped me out quite a bit, so I thought I'd give them a shout out. If you want to check them out, there'll be a link in the description. Wonder has been going ham, and he has been overhauling some maps with new foliage and point of interest. First we're going to look at Yehorivka. Yeho has received the Gorodok treatment from previous playtest, with its foliage and terrain being completely overhauled. We have thicker grass and a variety of new shrubbery. Some of the major point of interests on the map have received updates. As you can see here, Zalota Hillside has had some buildings added, as well as some tweaks to the terrain. Quarry has received a nice little update and actually looks like a quarry now instead of a dormant volcano. Minor point of interest in the form of trenches overlooks a new major point of interest. This new POI is in the form of a village that is located between West Moggy and Zalota. I wasn't able to find out what layer this POI is an objective on, and I wasn't able to find out its name. Wonder has gone through a lot of the empty spaces within the map and have filled them out a little. There should be a lot more minor point of interest between cap points, as well as adding more micro terrain, cliff faces, and even just minor touch-ups to pre-existing areas. So having firefights or even just travelling through these areas will be a lot more interesting. Alrighty, now we're going to get into the performance aspect of this overhaul. I've tested on two separate builds, a lower spec of mine and a higher spec. And as you can see based on the benchmark results, I did have a performance reduction. But the results aren't overly bad and is definitely playable, and we should see performance improvements in the future. Gorodok has received some more love from Wonder, and there is a lot of major improvements in this one. The train bridge and its surrounding areas has had a major rework. On the western side, we have this new train station, as well as a new road and some terrain adjustment. On the east side, there have been trench lines and bunkers added all around the bridge. This is a huge improvement. It's going to add a lot of replayability to the objective. Gas station on the east side, near industrial, has been completely reworked too. It is no longer just a single lonely little building, but a series of buildings, some vehicles, and some defensive structures. Hilltop has received some love. The terrain has been adjusted with new cliff faces and rocks. New defensive structures, trenches, and camo netting has also been added. Overall, it's going to be a lot harder to approach this cap point, but in the same time, it's also going to be a lot easier to get fishbowled. It'll come down to experience. Now let's have a look at performance differences. On both builds, I did receive less FPS compared to live, but that was expected. The good news is, compared to the previous playtest, I did receive an FPS increase, so it appears there has been optimizations done. The buddy boost feature has been improved. Previously, you would vault on a friendly and sort of get bounced off, like there was an invisible barrier, so it could take multiple attempts to try to get a vault up over a wall. Now, when you stand on a friendly's head, you can stand in place, rotate around, and not have to worry about getting launched off. It does make things a lot easier. And saying that, it might need a few adjustments here and there, as it appears it can be a little difficult to get a solid vault on someone's head. But overall, it is a major improvement compared to before. Some of the first changes to stamina are in this build, where vaulting no longer regenerates stam until you've completed the action. Now some of you out there are probably like, oh, this is pretty minor. While it's not overly significant, it's not that minor either. As you can see on screen now, vaulting one or two objects leaves you with far less stamina compared to previous build, so this adds to the whole decision making and stamina management aspect. Another interesting change is how full damage is calculated. Every time you receive damage from a jump or fall, it will take 20% HP off your current HP pool. So for example, if you have 100 HP and make a jump and it does damage, you'll be reduced to 80. Now let's say you make another jump. This will bring your HP down to 64 from 80. The height which you can survive from a fall has been reduced significantly too. Previously, you could survive a drop from 5 stories, but would die at 6 stories. Now, the height at which you'll die from a fall is approximately 2 stories. Approximately, because not all buildings are the same height. So now you have to be quite wary when maneuvering around heights and parkouring around the place. In the previous clip, you saw me walk off school and survive, but if I walk and jump or sprint and jump off, it results in death. Now I personally think 2 stories is a little too low. I think 3.5 to 4 stories should trigger a death, but anything under that from, let's say, 3.5 stories to 2 stories will cause you to ragdoll when you hit the ground, and will still apply the damage as well. In saying that, we should probably expect some tweaks over time, but until then, here's some pro tips. When jumping from heights, aim for higher objects, and before passing them, press the vault button. Same when jumping off of high buildings, off the balconies, and out of windows. You can do the same thing and jump through windows or onto other balconies. Anders has been at work and has adjusted the close and distance sounds of the M4. So I think the new sounds are a step up and a general improvement over the previous sounds, especially the distance sounds. The new up close sound has a bit of a mechanical element, which is good, and the new distance sounds have a nice sharpness to them. In saying that, I think the new sounds need a bit more volume. They're a bit quieter compared to the previous sound, and maybe a little more reverb added to the distant gunshot profiles. The G3 has had its sound updated again. The only change sounds were the up close sounds, distance sounds still remain the same. So it appears Anders has taken on community feedback and has made some changes to the sound. It appears to be a mix of the pre-V2 and post-V2 sounds. I really like it. I think Anders has done a very good change. The U.S ACOG has had its reticle adjusted. It is now a lot smaller. I'm pretty sure this change is in response to the feedback regarding the horizontal stadia not matching shoulder width. I don't mind the change, I think the smaller reticle is nice, but my only concern is the brightness being a bit too low. The small size and the very low brightness of the reticle makes it difficult to use within bright conditions. Muzzle flash profile has increased. I covered this in my previous video. If you missed that, there will be a link at the end of the video, as well as in the description below. One thing I'd like to acknowledge is Bruno, the VFX artist, has taken on my feedback, and we may see the AK-74 muzzle flash change in the future. I have a lot of hope for Bruno. He's a very talented artist and I can't wait to see what he comes up with. A nice thing to see is Rotorwash being implemented. It's not a gameplay changing addition, but it is a nice little immersive touch. Grass and foliage will react to the air disturbance caused by the rotor blades. Another cool thing is smoke grenades are also affected by this. It looks pretty cool. Trees are also affected by this. It's mainly the leaves and the small branches. The trunks themselves don't sway though, not yet anyway. Another thing that's currently not affected is water, but to my understanding, water has to be reworked for this to work properly. For those with deep fried potatoes as computers, a new settings category has been added. This new category is shaders, and within it, it allows you to adjust the material quality and also enable and disable tessellation. Tessellation does what you would expect it to by adding more detail to surfaces. The difference between it being enabled and disabled is quite noticeable. Now with material quality, the difference between high and medium is quite minimal, but the difference between high and low and even medium and low is quite high, especially when you disable tessellation on top of it. The last thing I want to cover is capture point speed, scaling with the number of people. So the speed at which you cap increases at a minimum of 4 player advantage over the enemy and maximizes at 6. Each player advantage from 4 to 6 is increased by 0.1 speed, which can reduce the cap time at 120 seconds to 80 seconds at maximum. Now I'm not going to say too much on this because I have limited experience with this new change, but all I can say is it does reward players for playing the objective, but it also will punish the uncoordinated quite a bit. Another thing is it does reward Zerg playing a little bit more, as it does put an emphasis on the numbers game. Alrighty, so this is pretty much the end of this video. I've covered everything I needed and wanted to. Hopefully this was informative and up to standard, but until the next one, I'll catch you guys later.